Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our third panel of the day here on the final day of our ninth Comic Art Live virtual con on Comic Art Fans. So, pardon us for the delay. We had to get the Paulo Rivera panel wrapped up, but we do have Mark Waid in the green room. My first time getting to chat with Mark. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I mean, it's we ever since the pandemic, we've been doing these virtual shows on Comic Art Fans, and they're a lot of fun. I mean,
I followed, and I think you're doing a really good job.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a lot of fun for me because prior to the pandemic, I was really focused on being a good art collector advocate. Right, I didn't get to work with the creators a lot, and since we started doing the panels, now I get to engage with the people who are making the very thing that we collect, and it's definitely been really enjoyable for me to get to engage the industry in a different way. Because now it's more than a hobby now. It's like I get to know the people whose lives depend on it, and who we've been enjoying their work for a number of years. And the other thing I gotta tell you, I don't get to talk to writers too often, so this is definitely a treat.
All right, terrific. I'm happy to be here.
But I have to ask, do you collect original art at all? I mean, do you have any?
I'm looking at 12 pieces just in my line of sight. Yeah. I don't collect it so much as it's either gifted or I will, I will make a deal directly with the artist. There's only a few times I've gone out and actually seen a piece and gone, I want to buy that. But that's still have a trunk full of original art. Some of it's not so special, but it's from projects that I've worked on, so it's special to me. Some of it is really nice. There's a few pieces here. I've got, there's a lot of Kurt Swan. There's a lot of Michael Ringo.
Great.
There's some Ron Garney. There's some Barry Kitson. I'm just kind of looking in my line of sight. Chris Somney, Adam Kubert's over there. Got Kurt Swan, Ty Templeton, Carmen Infantino and Murphy Anderson, a page from a Secret Origins flash story that they did for me.
Very nice.
I was, as an editor, I never ever made it, I never ever suggested that the art come back to me or that I'm gifted anything as an editor, because that's just, that's not cool. But regardless, every once in a while, an artist would send me something just as a thank you. In Carmine's case, it was because he and I was the first person to hire him back at DC after the longest time, because I wanted him to do some Secret Origins work, and he was very grateful about that. So there's a few pieces here. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, I've never owned anything by Infantino, and he's on my list. He's obviously a very unique style. He's unmistakable as from his pencil work, and I'm sure he was a challenge for some inkers to tackle his work. But yeah, I always enjoyed it. He did a little. He mostly worked for DC, but he did some Marvel work too. I collect mostly Marvel stuff, but I have Kurt Swan Superman. I can at least we have that in common. I assume that's what the Swan.
That's those pieces. Yeah.
Now and you've worked with so many amazing illustrators over your in your time. I mean we could go on and on. Like I remember you've done a lot of work with Perez back in the day, and it's just I don't know what do you have. I don't want to say like in your collaborations with creators. I mean, how do you tend to work with an artist? I mean, not as an editor, but more as a writer. I mean, when you're giving them a script. What's are you one of the guys that has like a full script? Do you give them a draft? How do you like to approach a situation with
As a general rule, I like to work full script, only because when you work plot dialogue, that means that I find myself as a plotter writing things like, then Spider-Man says something clever, and then I send it off to the artist, and a month later I'm staring at it, and I got to be clever that day. So I prefer full script, but that it's always right up at the top of the script. Here's my email. Here's my phone number. It is a collaborative process. It is not my story anymore now that I've given it to the artist. It is our story. And as long as we're both pulling in the same direction, if they see different ways of doing stuff, if they want to repace it, if they see if they see things that could be better, if they have better ideas, by all means, just let's talk about it, because they are not art robots. There are writers out there who treat their artists like art robots, and I don't like that at all. You don't get the best results, and it's just, why are you? Perez is a good example. Actually, with Perez, I worked full script at first, and then he said, "No, give me plot," because he's such a strong storyteller in his own right that it made sense of George's natural ability to tell a story by not giving him as much latitude as he wants. A lot of times also I will ask an artist right off, do you prefer full script? Do you prefer plot? Is there anything particular you like drawing? Is there anything particular you hate drawing? I'm not a short order cook. I'm not going to, just because you say I like drawing, 15th century architecture, I'm not necessarily going to squeeze it into a story, but it's good to know this. It's good. Do I hate drawing horses? I can work around that. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I mean, so like with someone like Perez, you didn't mind going just plot, and then you really having to fill things in afterwards. But then with working with him, did he, would he come back and say, these characters, this is what I'd like to have these characters saying on this particular panel, based on your plot? I mean, what was the back and forth like with them?
Not so much. George was a unique case. And again, I love George, and I miss George terribly. George was a friend of mine. I knew George when I was a fan, and he was kind to me then. Working with George was always a delight because he would always add to the process. There were never, if you asked for 12 characters, he'd give you 15. If you asked for one character, he'd give you 12. If you asked for 30 characters, he'd give you 100. And the only thing that was always a fun sort of stumbling point with working with George is that you would ask for one panel and he would give you 4. Which is great, except that now I've got 3 panels I have to fill with dialogue, and I don't know what is said here. I don't know quite what to do. And the best example was and this is the collaborative process. I mean, I turned in a story that was a recap of the wedding of Aquaman, which happened in Atlantis, and we used as reference an old 1960s shot of that scene where Wonder Woman was there. And Wonder Woman in the original story wasn't drawn wearing an air helmet like Batman and some of the Green Arrow and some of the other characters. So George calls me up and he says, well, why isn't she wearing, an oxygen helmet? I said, because she can breathe underwater. He says, why? I said, because at one point in her history, Poseidonites, as it was, gave her magic earrings that allowed her to breathe in space and underwater and stuff. And she said, okay. I said, but here's the thing, George, whatever you do, don't draw attention to that, because I don't want to have to explain that and stop the story dead. So whatever you do, please let's just gloss over that point. Weeks go by, I get the pages back, and there's not one but 2 panels where Mira is turning to Wonder Woman going, what's with the earrings? And she's like doing this. Like, the earrings. But that's the kind of thought that George would put into it. He would not just take your plot at face value. If he thought something made sense or didn't make sense or needed elaboration, he would call and we'd talk about it. It was probably, next to Alex Ross, the most collaborative process I've ever had in comics.
Well, that's he was such a remarkable man. I saw him at so many different shows. I paid for a Hero Initiative luncheon with him and my son, and he was incredibly gracious. I mean, the guy, was probably one of the best, if not the best ambassador for the industry that you could ever hope for. I mean,
it's somebody who's known him for all that time. I can tell you that was not a show. It was not a suit that George put on when he went onto the convention floor. George was that kind all the time.
Well, he was an amazing man, and I definitely miss him at shows. I mean, I think everybody does. Anybody that got the chance to interact with him at any level. He's a. But did you have relationships with other creators in a similar way? I mean,
I mean, some of them not so much, just because there's no need to, have a long communication with them. But Barry Kitson and I have a long storied relationship, working on stuff like Empire and Legion and other projects that we've worked on over the years. Michael Ringo and I certainly talked all the time we worked on stuff. Mike was a unique case too, because we were the same age. We went to the same college, although it turns out we didn't overlap. We didn't know each other, but we had that same frame of reference. So in other words, we basically had the same references growing up. So it was easier to create a shorthand with him. Chris Somney, same thing with Chris. It's a lot of, let's get on the phone, let's talk about the story, and then I'll write up a quick synopsis. He'll take the plot, and then we credit him as co-storyteller, as it should be. Yeah, I mean, I've generally, if I don't have a relationship with the artist, that only means that it's only because I'm working with you for like one fill-in, or one short story or something like that, or you're overseas and English is not your first language. So,
Do you, I mean, when you're going into a project that is going to, last for more than four to six issues, do you like to have influence over who the artists are that you get to work with? How important is that to you starting a new project?
It is important. I like that. It doesn't always mean I get what I want. I totally get that. And I'm very lucky that way. Not a lot of writers had that level of latitude. I just seem to have, after 40 years, seem to have built up enough goodwill where I have some clout when it comes to that stuff. But certainly, early on, just whoever's going to draw it is whoever's going to draw it. That's not my choice. But now, yeah, here's the thing, though. I know these are all like 20-minute answers to very short questions, and I apologize. If you ask me what time it is, I'll tell you how to build a watch. That's kind of how I work. But I'm also not as keyed in to the current artists, the current hot right this second artists as I should be. And so a lot of times it'll be, I'm pitching something, my editor will come back to me with some choices, because Dan Moore is a good example. Dan Moore is an amazing artist. He was not on my radar. I mean, I knew of him. I'd seen the Klaus stuff he'd done with Grant Morrison, but he wasn't on my active radar. So when Paul Kaminsky, my editor, said, hey, you want to do World's Finest, how about Dan Moore? I looked at his work. I'm like, wow, this is going to work. And he exceeded all expectations. So it's these days, it's more often that. It is more often, I've got an idea, who you got in the stable, who's on the bench that you like as an editor, who you think could do something. Let's take a look at some samples from different people and pull from there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. I mean, but you have to go. You work through the editor then in those cases to kind of get them to give you who's available versus
right, and who's appropriate. I mean, as I say, it's just a matter of if it were up to me, and it would just be so easy to fall back on the artists that I've worked with so many times before, which is not an insult to them in the least. I just would like to make sure that I'm working. I want to be able to work with as many artists as I possibly can, because I learn as I work with every artist, bring something to the table that makes me think of different ways of doing comics. So I don't want to get stagnant in that way.
Right. I saw a question here in the chat. We just talked about George a couple minutes ago. Henry wanted to know: Would you have liked to have worked on the Fantastic Four with George Perez?
Then I would have liked to have worked on Forbish Man with George Perez. I would have liked to work on anything with George Perez, sure. Although I don't know that it would have been as good as it was with Mike. There was just something about the combination of me and Mike that worked so well on Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing run, obviously. But you mentioned Alex Ross. He's somebody that is very hard. You don't see him at shows anymore. Really, he doesn't. You don't get to see him. He doesn't do a lot of even live, interviews that you can
No,
see.
he's the Loch Ness monster, basically. Yeah, he's
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you said that. That's a better analogy than I could come up with. I mean, so what's it like working with him as a professional? Because again, we as art collectors, there's so much of his art out there, obviously, and it's expensive. A lot of collectors love it. A lot of collectors have it in their calf galleries, but. What is it like to work with him? You said he's one of the best collaborators alongside George that you've had.
It was, and I think you would say the same thing. It was great. It was challenging at times because we both have such a deep reverence for the classic DC superheroes and have thought about them more than most people. And I've said before, he and I are the only two people in the world who can get into a 30-minute argument about the Martian Manhunter. So it was a lot of Kingdom Come was one of us throwing out an idea that the other one thought, not quite, but let's see what we can do with this. Some of it was throwing out an idea and I'm not sure, but let's try to make this work because it is a collaborative process. That said, there was just a lot of going back and forth. There was a lot of phone communication. There was a lot of fax communication because that's what we were working with in 1995. Mm-hmm. And there was just a lot more going back and forth. I think because we both knew this was something special, we wanted to get it right.
Well, it's still one of the most well-remembered books. I think, and because of the art and the story, you could tell that you both were in sync, pulling that off. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's just an amazing thing. So congrats to that. And that's, I have to say, I see one of your collaborators just popped into the green room. You might?
Yeah, bring him on.
All right. Let's see. Let's get it over here.
Oh,
hey, Mark.
My friend, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I think the last time I saw you was Buenos Aires, wasn't it?
Oh, no. That was when was the last time? Oh, God, it's been overseas. A while.
It was overseas somewhere, right?
It was Leeds.
That's right. It was Leeds. Yeah.
Yeah, 2012 in Leeds. And no, 2013, Mexico City.
It makes it sound like we're so glamorous that we travel.
I know. Well, I did feel glamorous in Mexico City because I'd never seen that level of response.
God, they loved you there. They love American creators there. You have to literally have bodyguards around you at these shows because they will just swarm in on you. It's great.
I'd never had a handler before because I never needed one. But yeah, that was great, and I love that show because I have a picture of you standing like Shazam, arms akimbo over Superman on the floor. I gotta post that now if I haven't before.
I just want to go on record as saying, and I've said this in public before, but I mean, not only do I mean it when I say that you were such an awesome collaborator and somebody to work with, but most people don't understand. Most people don't know that Paulo did me such a great kindness that I had asked him if he'd do Green Hornet with me. And he said, I'm not really doing the interiors anymore, but I'd love to do the covers. So I did 12 issues of Green Hornet with Dynamite. Paulo did 12 covers, beautiful covers. And one day after the thing is over with, I open up a package from Paulo and I open it up and there's all the covers in there, the original covers. And I call him up immediately. I said, you meant this to go to your art dealer. And no, Paulo said, no, I want you to have these. And I thought that to this day, it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. It's one of the most memorable gifts I've ever received. And what an act of kindness. And you don't want them back. That's not why you're here, is it?
That's actually, yes, this is my art dealer.
I know.
I wanted, I had to give you some kind of token of gratitude for how amazing a time I had on Daredevil. It was just, yeah. I wish I had stayed longer.
I wish you had to. With all respect to Chris, I wish you had to. So
yeah, that was the main thing. Is it was such a great. What I wish I had understood was how special that time was, where it was just the group of people that we had together. You know, you can't. There's no amount of money that can bring that together. You know, everything just has to. The stars have to align, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, the stars have to align.
Yeah.
Also,
and
how's your dad doing?
he's doing great. He's doing great. Yeah. He just inked a Magneto for me. He's we're trying to get him out to California soon enough. But
here's what I love about your dad, Bill. This is what I love about his dad. So, how many issues of Daredevil did he ink to get an Eisner? Like 8, something like that.
It wasn't much. It wasn't much. I mean, I only did 6 of the issues, I think.
Yeah. So
yeah, and it was his first 6.
I cannot.
Right.
I haven't looked. I don't know the records, but I cannot imagine that anyone ever won an Eisner for such a small body of work. I told him. I remember telling him the night he won, like, stop, just walk away.
Yeah.
Never pick up a pen again, and then you'll have the greatest career ever. So, but I'm glad he's still working with you. I mean, again, I love what he brings to your stuff. I still have downstairs a page of 7 that you sent with the pencils and the inks mounted side by side, and it's a really nice piece.
Yeah, no, he's still having a good time. I don't give him as much work as I used to, but you know, we're still working together.
Good. And what are you working on now?
I just kind of drop in on people's interviews.
Yeah,
kind of my thing now. No, you know, we stay busy. It's yeah, I'm not working as much for Marvel and DC, but it's like still the same characters, just for other companies. Gotcha. I need to get back into, and actually, I was just talking to Alex Ross about pitching something for Marvel.
Okay.
So we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But
anytime you want to do anything at DC, and I mean this, and this is not one of those fake Hollywood offers. Anytime you want to do anything at DC, you just call me, and we can do whatever we want. So
okay,
I'm dead serious about this.
I will keep that in mind, because I have been talking to them about because I need to make comics. I haven't made comics in many years.
That's
it needs to happen.
That's the thing. I mean, you were so awesome, and the only drawback to the path that you have taken is, as rewarding as I'm assuming it is to you, it is easy. It is too easy for people to forget that you're out there.
Yeah.
And so having some sort of, every once in a while, coming back and doing something, even if just for a few months or something, I think is a good move on your part.
I'll do it.
Not meant to be a lecture. I'm sorry.
No, you're the best part. I've been a fan, you know, since. Well, I hate this now because people say it to me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say it to you anyway. I've been a fan since I was a kid. I know how much it hurts.
It hurts. Yeah, exactly.
It hurts the old ticker. But I've loved your work for so long. Keep doing it.
Thanks, man.
I mean, and you know what? Before I let you go.
Yeah.
People have been suggesting this to me forever, and for some reason I don't know why I never got it, but I finally picked it up, and I'm finally going to read it, because I've heard so many good things about it over the years, and I don't know how I missed it the first time.
I hope you enjoy it. I'm really happy with the way that stuff came out. Thanks, man.
Yeah, so many people have said it over the years. I was like, all right, I gotta make the jump.
Well, people are saying the same thing about the Daredevil work we did together. It's so nice to have people bring that up, and they bring it up to you too, to sign, right? And it's been I don't know about you, but they say the same thing to me, which is I wasn't really keen on Daredevil, but I read this and wow.
Yeah. I mean, Daredevil was so good.
All right, man. Thanks for dropping in, but anytime, and we need to stay more in touch. And I'm dead serious. Anytime you want to do something at DC, just give me a call.
All right, will do, Mark. It's great to see you again. Bill, thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, take care, man.
Thanks for stopping by, man. And again, I love both the work you guys did on Daredevil, because I was always a fan of Daredevil, and you blew me away with the stories and the art, and I'm glad that it converted people to Daredevil fans. I mean, I really feel it was the both of you working together on that, because I've reread that run numerous times, and it's just one of my favorites. And the art that came out of it, Paulo, I mean, blows me away to this day. Every time I look back at some of the, the interiors, the covers, I mean, the work that you did was phenomenal. So yeah, my favorite stuff.
Thank you.
I think. Yeah. All right. Take care, Paulo.
Take care, Paulo.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Sure.
Well, that was nice.
That was very pleasant.
Yeah, no, we were in the green room right before the panel, and I was like, "Can I send you a link? And if you have any time, would you stop by?" Because I mean, it is, I love the Daredevil story, and it really, like his cover work, and like you just said, you were talking about the covers that he sent you. He just has a way of just coming up with his own, take on a character, when and just I don't know, there's. I don't know. Everybody can draw a pretty picture if they're in the business, but Paulo just has a way about him, and it's probably his background as a painter that's kind of influences some of the work that he does now, and it's just pencil and ink. But yeah, no, I've always enjoyed his work, and I think that's cool that he realizes that run had its you never can recreate that, right? With the team that was working together on that project.
And nobody knows it's special when you're doing it. It really is just, it's a lot of, after about a year or so, you look back on it and go, I guess we are doing something unique here. But I owe him the Eisner for that, because if that Eisner winning story with Daredevil #7 had not been drawn by him and his dad, it'd been drawn by just Joe Schmo, no one would care about that story.
Yeah, that's true. And I forgot about Joe getting an Eisner from that work. I mean, thinking work over Paulo.
For like 60 pages of comics, you get an Eisner. Good for you. Stop.
Exactly. That shouldn't happen. But Joe, because I've been good friends with Paulo's rep for a long time, so I've been with them at San Diego back when Paulo was really just getting started, and I got to see Joe numerous times before he started inking Paulo, and he is such a nice guy. And we had the art show in Orlando in January, and I made a point because his father lives in he's not in Tampa, he's nearby. So I was like, we got to get Paulo to come out. So Paulo brought his son, and and Joe and his wife were there, and it was perfect just to have them all back together again, because I hadn't seen them together in like a dozen years. So just great family making great art. But but so hey, I saw not a question, more of a comment about your time at Amazing Heroes. Mark said that you're always very kind and generous. Somewhere in my house, he says he has a handwritten note that you sent him in thanks for a fan drawing that he'd sent to Amazing Heroes when you worked there as an editor.
That's really nice to hear. Thank you, Rich. I'm glad you kept that. That was an interesting time. I was only the editor of Amazing Heroes for an hour and a half, but I enjoyed my time doing that. The only awkward thing about being the editor of Amazing Heroes, and this is an absolutely true story, is that I was hired, and then my first job, I was told my first day, was to fire my predecessor, who had no idea that I was coming in to replace him. It was my job to tell him. That was terrible. David Smay, if you're out there somewhere, I continue to apologize to you.
That's rough. I mean, did you know going in that you were going to be the one that had to do it?
No.
That's not fair at all. I mean,
so my first day, here I am. What do you want me to do? Well, there's David Smay over there. Yeah.
Wow. That is not. It was not fair.
It was a weird time. It was. I mean, this is back when Fantagraphics was operating out of a house, like a suburban house, and so I lived there. I literally lived there on the premises. I just made a bed out of some couch cushions and had a little storeroom in the corner I would wear, and lived out of a suitcase, and but I was also like 23 years old, so I could do that, and I love comics, and so it was an interesting time, and I certainly learned a lot about editorial. I learned a lot about production. I learned a lot about comics in general just doing that. So I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Sure. I actually own a cover from Amazing Heroes. I don't know if it was during your run or not, though. It was Bill Willingham Elementals cover for when that book was launching.
I remember that. Not my run, but that was a good cover. Yeah.
No, I always was an Elementals fan. I was always trying to get a cover, and that's like the only color one that I had ever seen. It's got where he actually painted it, because Willingham's one of my favorite artists. I love him back from his TSR days doing D&D modules.
Yeah.
And he painted a lot of the covers of those. And barring finding one of those, which I've never seen on the market, this was like the next best thing I could get from Bell. But we're here to talk about some other stuff too. Of course, you have Comic Book U going on with Howard Chaykin. I know you guys started that. Seems like I've talked to Jim about it for a little over a year, or maybe just a year. Did it start
Just
like
a year,
that?
I guess we've been planning it for a while. I think we debuted at UCLA in September, I want to say.
Okay.
And it's something that Howard enjoys teaching. I enjoy teaching. Between the two of us, we have like 100 years of experience. And so I had done a manuscript for a book that may or may not ever come out from Simon & Schuster called How to Do Comics. Everything soup to nuts, like everything from the basic idea to coloring and lettering. Here's the basic process. So, someday pandemic ruined everything. But because I had all these notes, because I'd already figured out how to explain a lot of it, forced me to learn how to teach what I instinctively know. So let's put this to use. So Jim McLaughlin and I did a bunch of Zoom stuff during the pandemic with fans. Howard did the same. And now the world has opened up again, but maybe now is the time to do Comic Book U. It is Howard and I, it is like an all-day seminar, 6 hours plus, where we sit there and we just walk you through storytelling in comics and basically spill upon you everything that we know. And hopefully at the end of that, you'll come out of it with a better sense of how to use comics to tell stories. It's not so much, hey, here's how to draw comics. It's not, here's how to make the figure work. And here's here's how perspective works. It's not that. Because you can find all this stuff online for free. This is instead, here's stuff that Howard and I are uniquely positioned to talk to you about, and with our years of experience. So basically it's 6.5 hours we start with me talking about storytelling in comics and how it's different than storytelling in any other medium, and the things you need to know, the things you need to keep in mind. There's some really basic 101 stuff in there, but there's also some pretty in-depth conversation about how to achieve this, how to achieve that, the stuff that is not, basic 101. We segue with a segment between Howard and I together where he's working off a page of a script that I have done, and he's working on, on an overhead projector or a big notepad or whatever and sketching it out and laying it out. And he gives us a chance to talk about, as a writer, here's why I made these choices. When I came up with the script, here's what I was thinking when I wrote the script. Here's what I was thinking when I wrote these captions and dialogue and scene descriptions. And Howard then explains how he interprets that and the choices he's making as he goes. And then it segues into Howard doing a lecture on, again, how to design a page, for effective storytelling, how to lay out a page for effective storytelling. So it's good for artists, it's good for writers, it's good for both of them, because I think, and I honestly believe this, that whether or not you're pursuing one specific discipline, writing or art or coloring or whatever, or if you're trying to learn to do everything, it's better to learn as much as you can about everything about the process, because it just makes you better at what you do. I know I'm a better writer because I know basic art. I know I'm a better writer because I know enough Photoshop to color. Not well, but I know I know the process. Look at Lee. We are good man. Lee, we are heavily endorsed.
Thank you for letting us know about that, Lee. That's great. So I'm curious, like when you're going through the seminar, do you stay up on stage while Howard's giving his takes so that you might interject, or is there any interaction between you both throughout the process? Is it, so you're kind of collaborative, or you get out of his way?
Howard is a machine on his own. Howard needs me like a third leg up there. He's got his spiel, he's got his stuff. And as far as when I'm doing my stuff, Howard is in the back of the room basically just heckling every once in a while. But that's, basically, except for the overlap period, we kind of just going to leave it to, okay, you're the one who knows what you're doing here. I'll do my part later.
Well, he's, the first time I had Howard on the channel, it was over 3 years ago. And I mean, I felt stupid, because I was doing my research, for the chat.
Right.
And every page, and I was doing most of it on Comic Art Fans. I wanted to look at his art. So I get him on, and like maybe 10 or 15 minutes into the interview, I say, Howard, do you know that you're like one of the best page designers I have ever seen? And because it really hit me as I was going through Comic Art Fans and looking at his work, that I never really appreciated panel layout until I was looking at his work so much. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, he goes, Bill, I've had Marvel had me, lecture the bullpen, on this stuff, and I've been doing it all my life, and I didn't know that, but it was striking, when you really get down to analyzing, one creator's skill sets, that Howard was just fantastic as far as his construction and the way he kind of moved the eye around and changing angles, pulling you back, dropping the camera angle. He did it all the right times. And to this day, I don't think I've really seen another creator that consistently, has that, visual acumen with regards to narrative storytelling. He just he blew my mind.
No, I work with some of the very best modern artists, and as good as they are, you can tell nobody is giving that same level of thought a lot of times into how to move the eye around the page. Howard's a man. Here, to my mind, there were four masters of it. There were Dick Sprang, there was Carmen Infantino, Ty Templeton, and Howard are, to me, some of the very best panel-to-panel storytellers, page designers. I always tell aspiring artists, if you're out there and you're listening, the best book you can pick up is a book called Panel Discussions. It was published by Tomorrow's. It's still in print. It's on Amazon. It's fairly inexpensive. And Panel Discussions is an interview with Mike Ringo and Mike Mignola and so many other different artists about how they lay out a page, not how they draw figures. And it's not an instructional booklet about anatomy. It's just, here's how to lay out a page for the clearest storytelling and the best storytelling. I cannot recommend that book enough. Neither can Chris.
I've seen it, but I've never read it, so I'm going to have to get it. Yeah, making a note of that. It's still available on Amazon. I'm going to look it up. But yeah, so you have a great collaborator for Comic Book U. That's the thing. You couldn't have asked for a better partner, for that project. I mean, do you bring in any, guest artists or any other people in the business to kind of?
We do, because we're a traveling roadshow. It kind of depends on who's available, at the time, and who's local. But we've had Christian Gossett with us a couple of times, and that's one of the things we look for when we go to a different town, is who's available, who might be willing to step up. Not everybody wants to step up, because it's not every artist is comfortable being on stage, having to work, without. Like in the nude, just working up there, without protection, without any buffer. You're out there raw.
Sure.
But we love that too. I mean, there's always room for that.
No, I think you have two upcoming Comic Book U's. One,
we do.
The next one is in May, right? I mean, so later this month.
Next one's Oklahoma City. Okay. It's Thursday, May 23rd. It is the day before the Oklahoma comic convention starts. We figure that's a rather than visiting a city randomly, Tuesday the 12th or whatever, it's better to hook it up with a convention, so that we figure if you're a comics fan and you're going to be in town for the convention, maybe you'll stay a day earlier. Maybe you'll be in the area and you'll want to kind of, come a little bit earlier for that. So that's kind of our modus operandi with that. It is the Thursday before the show. That is May 23rd. We also have one in Connecticut at Terrificon, which is mid-August, I want to say. And
August 16th. I'm looking at the calendar right now. Yeah.
So it'd be the Thursday before the show starts, and it is us doing our song and dance. So if you visit the websites on, as shown here, thank you. Or if you want to visit the websites of those specific conventions, there's instructions there as to how to buy an add-on ticket to come to this thing, or a solo ticket. I mean, you don't have to come to the convention if you want to just come to the seminar. But if you want to do both, have at. We love having you at the conventions afterwards to ask questions.
Yeah, in the show description, I should let everybody know that I've got links over to both of these websites, and then also over to the 7 Lafayette site that has a little bit more details about the program. And I can tell you that at least with the Terrificon show, there is actually a promo code for that. And if you just use CAF in the checkout, it'll give you another $10 off the price for the Comic Book U. So that was cool that Terrificon did that. I actually,
Nice.
That's one of the shows that I've always wanted to go to, and I've not been able to get up there to
Same
see
here.
it.
Same here. Everybody
I hear great things about it.
can't wait to be there.
Exactly. Well, it won't be this year. I know I can't do it this year, but maybe next year. I hear great things from the creators that go to it, and when the artists and the writers and the comic book professionals talk highly of a show, it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
Because typically these days it's not what you get, right? You hear the negativity at going to shows, but that Terrificon, they've got a great reputation, and I think they always have a great artist lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a Heroes or a Baltimore show where they really kind of focus on the creators, which is nice.
Yeah.
So
again, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I don't want to go to shows that are full of celebrities and not so many comic people. Look, I don't begrudge celebrities. I don't begrudge, a spear carrier on the Arrow show to show up and get an autograph. I don't begrudge that in the least. What I do find, interestingly enough, and I put this out there for other artists and writers who are listening and maybe are not going to so many shows these days, what I found is that with the bigger shows that have a lot of Star Trek and Arrowverse and whatever celebrities, it used to be that Saturday was the big show for artists. It used to be that's the big day for Artist Alley because it couldn't get the most people coming in. Now it is the slowest day because there's only so many tickets to be sold, right? And so if you're a fan of TV and Star Trek in general and not necessarily a comics fan and you live in the area, that's the ticket. You're going to buy that Saturday ticket. And so that's where you get a lot of, and that's fine, but it's an interesting dynamic how that's changed over the years. So now Saturday is sort of the slower day. Friday and Sundays end up being a little bit better.
yeah, I hear that all the time too. It's like the first day of the show, whether it's a preview night on a Friday or if it's a Thursday or the last day of the show. I almost hear that all the time from artists and their reps that more art gets sold, on the ends of the show than in the middle.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of makes sense because you bring in the families. I went to MegaCon in early February, and it just seemed like, and I went on a Saturday, and it just seemed like that was family day.
Right.
You saw
and again, I think that's awesome. In no way do I begrudge these.
We need the younger generation appreciating pop culture. That's for sure. But yeah, for the creators, it's a little bit slower. But hey, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I saw that Jose Marzan's in the
Jose.
chat. He says he can't wait to see you both at Terrificon. So he'll see you there.
We do a mean tank. Yeah.
There was a gentleman in the audience. It was funny before we mentioned where the locations were. He was hoping that you were going to be in Hartford, Connecticut. He'd step up, and then now he says he's going to be there. So that's
your
good.
wish is our command. You caught, by the way, putting up the graphic. You caught me. I said Thursday before the show. That's not right. With Terrificon, it is the Friday morning of the first day because the show starts late in the afternoon. So we're going to do it like a shorter version of the class in the morning.
Got it. And like I said, it's $10 off at the Terrificon event if you use the promo code CAF in the checkout. So please do that. And I hope we get I hope we get some CAF members attending that. And if you do, take a few pictures of everybody up there for me. I'll promote it even more. So
right.
I'd like to do that. I saw also somebody mentioned, are there any plans to potentially do a Comic Book U in the Northwest area? Because I know you've been to, or was it North? Yeah, was it? I better go back and look at that, Jack, because I'm, where was it? West Coast Avengers. Yeah, he said, no, that wasn't that one. Where the heck was it? I know I saw it. Oh, there were plans for a Comic Book U in the Northwest. You were in the Southwest.
Right, Southwest. Nothing specific yet. Well, we're trying to, like I said, at least as we start to roll out, team up with different shows. So a lot of that is just logistics. Is the show interested in even partnering with us? Is it a show that, as you know, there's so many conventions now that Howard and I are both going to, that, you know, a lot of time we have to work, he and I have to work to make sure we're at the same one, because
Right.
you know, I mean, at least once a month, he and I are hitting a different show.
That's true. Howard, yeah, I got me. I follow him on Facebook. He seems to be at a show every other month at bare minimum, if not more than that.
Yeah, I put my schedule together the other day all in once, and oh my God, I can't. Why am I doing this to myself? There's so many shows.
That is true. But yeah, again, you couldn't have a better co-host of a comic book than Howard. So that's awesome. I would definitely like to get to one of them myself. And I do know that in the link in the show description, there's a few like excerpts that Jim had posted on the YouTube channel, so everybody can kind of get a flavor for how it's done. And I think there was a sit down with the two of you at his place. I don't know. I can't remember where you guys were at, but just kind of talking about the overall format of it. So let's see here. I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions in the chat as well. But somebody did have a question about where was it? Yeah, it was from Casey. Just your run with Ringo, and you already mentioned him as one of the creators that you really enjoyed working with. But on your run with him on Fantastic Four, I mean, can you give us some insight into how that project came about and what it was like working with him?
It came about just because editor Tom Brevoort thought we would be a good match, and he had tapped Ringo and really wanted me to come aboard because Tom was one of our earliest Flash fans. But I have two stories about Mike. I mean, one of them is the reason I wanted him on Flash back in the day, back before he had done one story at DC Comics, and I had gone in the editor's office for other business, and I saw a page of that story. It hadn't been printed yet. So a page of that story upside down, because I'm standing on the other side of the editor's desk. And on the basis of looking at that page upside down, I said, this is the guy. This is the guy I want. He's that good. And he absolutely was. The kindest thing about Mike when it came to Fantastic Four was that there was that period where Bill Jemas, who was the publisher at the time, wanted him fired because he had a vision for the book that was insane and stupid. And editor Tom Brevoort and I tried to accommodate, but it wasn't to his liking. And he wanted to turn the Fantastic Four into a sitcom, basically a suburban sitcom where Reed is a wacky inventor who lives in suburbia, and Sue is his wife, who's a secretary somewhere, and Bill and Johnny is a fireman. It was bonkers. So we tried to do our best. Bill said no. Bill fired me, and Mike, in solidarity, quit, which he didn't have to do, which was an amazing show of friendship and professionalism and collaboration. So I have nothing but good things to say about Mike.
Well, I always loved his art. It was such a clean style, but even with his pencil work, I mean, it was supple. It was, there was just something about it. I mean, he kind of stood out from a lot of the creators at that time, and and just so ridiculously humble. I mean, really, honestly, didn't believe anybody was paying attention, and I wish he was around for even a tenth of the conversations I've had since he passed. From people, we were talking. We was at a convention this last week in Sweden, of all places, and it's a bunch of artists, and all we were doing for 20 minutes was talking about Mike and talking about how influential he was and how great he was. And I didn't bring it up; it just came up, and it was just he is missed. And I've had that conversation more times than I know how to count. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jose. And Jose was an awesome inker on Mike, and he was absolutely a class act. Yeah, I mean, definitely, we didn't get enough artwork to appreciate from Mike. That's so true. And I saw him a lot at shows, talked to him a few times. I mean, it was just neat to, that was right around the time I started collecting original art, and I regret not asking him for a piece, while he was there, because I picked up a few pieces since he passed. But I would have loved to have been able to tell him how much I liked his work. And that's one thing that we talk about it a lot here as art collectors. That's the greatest thing about our hobbies. We get to meet the people whose work we really appreciate. There's not a lot of hobbies where you get to do that, and and ours has one, and so we all have to always remember that. Life is fleeting sometimes. If you really appreciate an artist or a writer, you got to go out and make sure you let them know. Because you're doing something you love, and you're getting a paycheck, but I have to believe it's still a lot of fun to be told that you're the somebody whose work that is really admired.
This is a very accessible entertainment medium. Not like, if I'm a big fan of a TV show, the chances of me ever meeting the star of that show are nil. The chances of me meeting a novelist who I like are really small, but are being able to reach out or having some sort of communication with. But comics, artists, and writers, we're on social media all the time. We are at conventions and signings all the time. We're I think probably the most accessible entertainment field people out there.
So true. Hey, if you saw in the, well, I don't know, I didn't probably tell you to turn the chat on, but Paulo actually sent in the photograph that he was talking about.
Oh, let's see.
Let's take a look at
it. Yes. Good photo. Good.
Thank you, Paulo. Yeah, that's you are looking pretty tough there, Mark.
yeah, right. But that's a great shot. I love the people who show up at conventions cosplaying as Kingdom Come characters. They're just the best.
Wow, that worked out very, very well. Yeah, even one of my favorite con memories is Paulo. That is awesome. Thank you, Paulo. Now post it to your Instagram so it'll be up there forever, and no one will forget about it. That's awesome. Let's see. Paulo said, Mike taught me how to draw Spider-Man in Wizard magazine. That's true. I forgot about those. Wizard was pretty influential back in the day, as far as they always had those artist segments, which were kind of cool. That it's thanks to Wizard that a lot of artists became kind of rock stars, right? Before then, you didn't know everybody's name, or you knew the name, but you couldn't really, Wizard made a lot of professionals, very, very popular. For different reasons. But oh man, I'm sorry, I can't get that picture out of my head now. But listen, Mark, this I know I hate to run, because I'm basically we could have had an extra 5 minutes here, but I have 3 minutes.
Got other things to do. Got it.
I do. But
who's after me?
Yeah, I'm talking with Dan Parsons. We've done some. He's a comic professional. He's self-published. Exactly. And he's had a few challenges in the last year with one of his children, health-wise, and so we've done some fundraisers for him, and we've got another fundraiser for him next Friday. So wanted to have him on and just introduce him to everybody, because I've actually never had the chance to talk with him. So got him, and then I've got a panel with Ben Templesmith after that as well. So kind of busy, but I do want everybody to know that, again, if you're interested in Comic Book U, there are links in the show description. So please, follow them. And if even if you can't make it, share it with some friends who are in the area where these are at. Oklahoma City coming up next, and then Terrificon in Connecticut in August are the next 2 opportunities where you get to see Mark and Howard Chaykin talking about how comics are created.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you taking the time today.
No, thanks for having me. Absolutely.
I appreciate everybody in the chat. I'm moving on to my next panel, but again, have a wonderful afternoon. And for the moms